When people say you can't abolish war, it's with us forever, I say, well, we haven't tried very hard yet. Don't think about war as an event or a series of events. Think about it as a system, a tumor on human society, and as something that people die for and kill for and create all kinds of havoc for. It profits people, it profits companies, it profits elites. And this group of hawks was very influential in the 9/11 events and what came after that. The American people are willing to fight wars if their blood is up, if their blood is boiling hot. Well, what is it that triggers that phase change? This created mass murder. In public, 3,000 people were killed.
A huge explosion now, raining debris on all of us. We better get out of the way.
It was a horrific crime, and it was extremely shocking to people who watched it.
We have an enormous explosion now in the remaining World Trade Towers center.
Boom, 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 boom. And as the bombs were going, people just started running. I just turned around, and I just started running for my life.
A terrorist attack is an attack that is meant to cause terror, especially politically useful terror. The question is, who were the terrorists?
Americans reasonably wonder, how long will it last? The answer is that many of these changes we made are permanent, at least in the lifetime of most of us.
Hello, everybody. I'm very happy and honored that today I can talk to Ted Walter. He is the executive director of the International Center for 9/11 Justice. He's one of the people I really look up to because he's in the U.S. peace movement. He's trying to find out how we can get out of this system of forever wars. And that's why he digs very deep into international politics. And he has done excellent research on 9/11. It's fair to say that he's one of the best researcher on 9/11 in the United States. He's also the producer and co-director of a movie, which is called a documentary film, which is called Peace, War, and 9/11. So, Ted, it's a great pleasure and a great honor to have you on today.
Thank you, Daniele. It's an honor to be with you as well. Thank you so much.
Just to introduce our audience to where we're based. So I'm based in Switzerland, here near Basel, and you're based in the United States, near New York. So everybody knows we're on two sides of the Atlantic Ocean. I'm in Europe and you're in North America.
Yes.
Ted, you've produced, recently released and co-directed the movie Peace, War, and 9/11. You were so kind to allow me to put it on my YouTube channel. There were more than 100,000 people who watched it. We've had great feedback because the late Graeme MacQueen, the way he puts forward his argument is just excellent. I mean, I wanted to start with your documentary. What were the feedbacks that you had in the United States on this documentary that you produced?
Yeah, well, I want to say thank you as well for putting it on your channel. It brought the film to a whole new audience, a German-speaking audience that many of whom would not have been able to enjoy it otherwise. So thank you. And I read a lot of the comments on your YouTube page, which were really moving. People were so moved by the film. I think. And we saw a similar response in the U.S. and also in Canada. We were actually the premiere of the film was last September in Hamilton, Canada, where Graeme MacQueen was from or lived much of his life. And yeah, I'm just so I guess kind of humbled and flattered that the response has been so positive. I really have to attribute that to Graeme more than anybody, who's, as you know, and as many people know, is so eloquent and so precise and so rigorous in his analysis of 9/11, as well as the anthrax attacks. So filming Graeme and editing Graeme it was relatively, I won't say easy, but he did so much of the work, and his sort of beautiful soul kind of shines through throughout the entire film, and I think that's what people respond to so positively. I also worked with a wonderful editor / director named Rich Heap, who is really also largely responsible for the beauty of the film. He was a tremendous editor and just putting the story together with him. He didn't know that much about 9/11, which kind of helped in a way, I think. And although his brother-in-law is a 9/11 family member, his brother-in-law is Matt Campbell, who's a British 9/11 family member campaigning for a new investigation into his brother's death on 9/11. So I think he brought that to it. He brought this deep sense of care because he has a family member who was directly affected by 9/11. So we just had tremendous people involved that made it so good. And yeah, the response has been amazing.
Glad to hear that, because my feeling when I watched the film that you produced was really that it reaches out to people who are not, maybe initially interested in 9/11 at all. I mean, who just are interested in our planet and say, okay, we're 8 billion people here in 193 different countries, ranging from Iran, Israel, Ukraine, US, China, Russia. Why can't these countries be, at peace? And what's actually going on? And how do we, differentiate between the US population on the one side and the US government on the other side? Because that, it's a very important distinction to make. And I think when Graeme made his analysis, being a Canadian, it really touched everybody, independent whether they were in Italy or in Mexico, or whether they were in the US or in Russia or in China. I think his remarks, and I'd like you maybe to elaborate on that. His remarks were that he said, okay, I've been diagnosed with cancer, so I know that I'm going to die. But he makes it very clear that he's completely convinced of the fact that the soul will live on and that he will just leave his body behind. It almost had the touch for me that he said, don't be sad, folks, I'm doing this. And all I want to do is to stand up for truth and stand up for peace. So he really was beyond any fear of what will the media say and what will my neighbors say and what will people think. It was this soul power that I felt. And I mean, I emailed with Graeme when he was still alive, and we were in good contact, but I never met him personally. And I'd like to put that question to you, to just maybe bring people back to that moment, how Graeme interacted with you and how you saw this soul power of Graeme MacQueen.
Yeah, well, I think that pretty much everybody who meets Graeme, whether they get to meet him in person or sort of virtually like you did, can sort of feel that special presence and that special power that comes from him. I think there's just a deep sense of compassion that he felt towards the people around him, and a deep sense of sort of wisdom as well. And yeah, it kind of, you feel it in every moment with him. You feel it in every moment, and you just wonder, does this guy ever have a immature moment? Does he ever, he would joke around. He's not like he's like this sort of, I don't know, Jesus figure who's serious all the time and whatever. Like he has a very great sense of humor as well, and get pretty jokey. But yeah, you just feel it, and like I think you see that in the response since he passed away a year ago today.
Is it exactly today a year? Okay.
Exactly, yeah. It's April 25th, 2023 that he passed away. And he, I've been saying for the past year that, I think his most important contribution, and he had so many, from the book he wrote to the articles to this film, etc. but is the effect that he had on other people around him, that he was always lifting up and encouraging the other people around him. And like, so indirectly, through his efforts and just through who he was, he kind of produced so much good output and good work by others. You know, I think I myself, I became friends with him, I would say in the early 2010s. And I don't think I would have done nearly as much in the 9/11 truth movement and the cause of peace and justice if it wasn't for him. He was very encouraging of me and my work. And I think he had that impact on probably dozens of other people. So yeah. And we often say, what would Graeme do? You know, like that's like in our organization, you often think about, we're in a tense situation or what a difficult decision to make or whatever. It's like, what would Graeme do is the question.
I think it's such an important question because, you know, the world is still full of turmoil. I mean, we have the war in Gaza going on with, we have more than 30,000 people dead in Gaza, with Israel bombed the Iranian embassy in Syria and Damascus, and then Iran said we're not gonna take that, and then Iran bombed Israel. They say there was only minor damage, so it was, a moderate bombing, but still it was a bombing. Then Israel bombed Iran. They say, it was only a moderate bombing, but all of this happened now in this month, April 2024. So the point where you really dig deep, the point for peace, the point for de-escalation, the point for understanding and also for respect is still very, very, very important. And therefore, I would really advise everybody, and I put the link below this YouTube conversation, that you watch the film with Graeme MacQueen if you've not seen it yet, that produced. It's called Peace, War, and 9/11, and you'll really find the link below the video. But let's get back to maybe a more general question, Ted. How is the peace movement doing anyway? Because people ask me, how is the peace movement doing in Switzerland? I'm always a bit, yeah, we're here, we're doing our thing, but it's hard to say how many we are. And I don't know, how's the peace movement doing in the United States? I mean, in times like these.
Yeah, that's a really good question. That's hard to answer, in a sort of empirical way. I think one thing that's really sad, that's deeply frustrating, is that we're seeing right now is that whatever the public sentiment is that there's now an incredible disconnect between what the public feels or what the public wants and what is actually being done by, the leaders of the U.S., the leaders of Israel, the leaders of Ukraine, the leaders of Russia, et cetera. I think that, the opposition to what Israel is doing in Gaza right now has just been growing by the day, by the week, and yet there's no change in policy, U.S. policy toward Israel and toward Palestine, and so I sense that there is probably now at this time more than ever before an opposition to war in general. I mean, of course, there was, you have the 1960s and 70s with Vietnam, but maybe in this century, at least, let's say that opposition to war is stronger than ever before, and we have so much more data now, in a way, like it's just one war, and just conflicts, unending sort of crises and conflicts, and it's very clear that. I think it's being clear there's a more sophisticated analysis now, perhaps. It's always been there from War is a Racket, the book by the U.S. general, I remember his name.
Smedley Butler.
Yeah. So this is not like a novel analysis, but I think that it's becoming more prevalent, the idea of war as a system, of war as a racket, now than in past decades. And, you can't, there has to be something. I think what the response to this film shows, and opposition generally worldwide to war, is that it's not an organic, like genuine, unavoidable process. At this, I think the wars that we see today in this world, and that we even saw for much of the 20th century, were very much manufactured, very much serving very specific agendas, and the public had to be tricked into supporting them. And in every war, obviously there's serious questions about October 7th, and which led to what we're seeing in Gaza now. So every war is people had to be conned into it. Now, what I think we might be seeing is that the powers that be don't even care as much about, does the public support this? How do we get the public to support this? Although the propaganda wars are immense and tense and ongoing, but I think that they're willing to live with an even greater disconnect between public sentiment and what policy is today.
I'm fully with you. I mean, that's the way I see it as well. I mean, would it be fair to summarize it like that we always, in each and every given country, we really have to distinguish between the government on the one side and the population on the other side? Because I mean, what people in Israel think must not be, identical with what Prime Minister Netanyahu thinks, or what people in Russia think must not be identical with what President Putin thinks, or what people in Ukraine think must not be identical with what President Zelensky thinks, or what people in Switzerland think must not be identical with what Swiss Foreign Minister Ignazio Cassis thinks, and what people in the US think must not be identical with what President Biden thinks. I mean, there's an overlap. Some people obviously agree with what their government does, but I think it's fair to say that a lot of people, they don't want any more wars. And if we make this distinction between government and population, I think that's a huge step ahead. Because, they always, here in Switzerland, where I'm based, they say people in the United States, support Israel with weapons. Well, I mean, you are in the United States and you don't support Netanyahu with weapons. It's your government which is sending the weapons, and you personally disagree. That's also why I make these video calls, because I personally disagree with my Swiss government, and you personally disagree with specific actions of your government. And I think it's fair to make this transparent.
Yeah. And I think to the extent that people in the US or elsewhere do support wars, do support, providing weapons to Israel, it is because they have been propagandized and because they have been misled by the government, by the mass media, etc. I think that the perhaps the biggest thing is that we've been propagandized to think of war as a normal thing that humans should do, and we've been sort of desensitized to it. And I think one of the points that Graeme makes towards the end of that film of Peace War 9/11 is that we need to delegitimize war and show how actually abnormal it is. In this day and age, it is incredibly an abnormal thing. Many of us are able to live peaceful lives in our everyday existence. Countries are able to interact without engaging in war, and it's really a con game. I think that war is allowed to persist.
I fully agree, and it sort of reminds me of what Julian Assange said. I mean, Julian Assange said if the media can trick people into wars, then we might be able to use new forms of communication and new peace media structures to actually show the lies, and that will then end all these wars. I mean, is that something that you try to do with your 9/11 research and in your excellent documentary, Peace War and 9/11 studies? Do you think that it's really a new age where we can use YouTube, we can talk to each other, we don't need to call CNN or Fox News and ask them whether they'd be ready to talk about World Trade Center 7? We just don't need that. We can go directly through our new YouTube channels and have this direct, uncensored communication that people appreciate. What do you think? New forms of media usage can lead to more peace. Is that a hope that you share?
I certainly share that hope, and I think we do see that to a large extent. I think we're also seeing efforts to push back at the democratization of media. This censorship, the big tech the way that they manipulate algorithms and so on to sort of shadow ban or, et cetera, or just simply ban people from their platforms. And I'm not an expert in this, but as I understand that countries around the world are moving closer and closer to, passing laws that are purporting to, be, preventing hate speech or other sorts of, sort of violent or damaging behavior or speech, but is really just has the effect of censorship. So I think that that's going to be a battle that we're going to see play out in the coming years, is how successfully can countries and big tech platforms sort of censor, and silence dissidents all over the world. I think that we have to, why I continue to focus on 9/11, and I know why I think you do as well, is that it's, in much of your work, is that it is about, we will never succeed in ending these wars and ending the war system, as Graeme calls it, if we don't expose the deception that is involved in triggering hot wars. If it's
fully agree. Yeah. I mean, I fully agree with the ABC weapons in Iraq. It was, the most obvious one, but also the Vietnam War was based on lies. The Gulf of Tonkin incident. I mean, the book. I put it here in my book, USA: The Ruthless Empire, for those who want to read that. I mean, in that book, I write that I'm convinced that World Trade Center 7 was brought down with controlled demolition, and I base it on a study of the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and Leroy Halsey, who did that research, is another person I'd like to mention in our short communication. Leroy Halsey is a man you met personally. Is that correct?
Oh, yes. Met him personally several times, and actually worked closely with him on that study. I was at Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth for 8 years, and involved in getting that study started and basically collaborating with Leroy throughout the whole process.
I saw this, sorry to interrupt, I saw this one interview where Leroy also said, I do this because I just think I have to do what my soul tells me what is right. He was asked, isn't it dangerous to question 9/11? And he said, you basically have to take it from that level, that you just do what is right in those days that you're given to live on planet Earth. And I had this feeling that he's very much on the same ethical level, like Graeme MacQueen. So Leroy Halsey and Graeme MacQueen, for me, together with you and a few others in the United States, David Ray Griffin, etc., Richard Gage, many others, are people who are in the United States who are very courageous, who push forward with this 9/11 research. And is that the same feeling that you had when you met Leroy Halsey, that he's also operating from a level of consciousness where he's not just looking at his career or looking at his money, but looking at what he thinks is ethically right to do?
Yeah, absolutely. I think in 2015, when he got into the work, he had, I will say, he did right away on the day of 9/11, he saw the Twin Towers go down, and he thought to himself, that's impossible. That buildings don't behave that way. So he's one of the many experts who realized it immediately. And he didn't do something about it for many years, because he was relatively, he was younger, he was teaching classes, et cetera. But although he did say to his class within the week after 9/11, there's no way that those buildings could have come down. As I understand it, as he told me, he did say to his class, it doesn't make sense how those, but a lot of people are just busy and they don't see the opportunity in front of them. But then when the opportunity was put in front of him, I think he said, yeah, I have nothing to lose, at least at this point. And he totally dedicated himself to it. And, he's a truth teller, and he's, it was the word that we've been talking about recently in our organization, thumos. It's a Greek word, which basically means the inability to tolerate injustice and truth. And so it's how much of a reaction do you have when you see something that's untrue being put forward? How desperately do you how desperate is your urge to correct the untruth and to correct the injustice. And so, yeah, Leroy has that. And, I think that's sort of the thing, and not just the 9/11 movement or even the peace movement, but people in general. It's that defining quality we don't really have a word for it in the English language. And I don't know about German, but in English, we don't have a word for that. It's the inability to tolerate injustice that they had in Greece with the word.
Yeah, I'm checking my German vocabulary, but it also this love for truth is probably what I would come up with. Yeah. I would like take these two names, Graeme MacQueen, that I first want to really highlight very, very much, and draw people's attention to his work and to your movie, to your documentary, Peace, War, and 9/11. And I also want to highlight Leroy Halsey, who's done the study on the World Trade Center 7, this third skyscraper, which was not hit by a plane on 9/11, but collapsed in its own footprint. And he did this analysis. I think it was 2019 that he published a report. Is that correct? It's already a few years ago, but some people have not seen it. And Leroy Halsey came to the clear conclusion that fire could by no way cause this collapse. And so I think for anybody who's maybe new, the interesting thing is I came across people who are now very young, and he said, okay, I was not alive in 2001. I was born after that. I'm like, oh yeah, gee, I'm getting old. and they say, how do I start, into that subject 9/11? Because I hear, we're being told the truth, or we've been lied to, or the government has lied to us, and the NIST, National Institute for Standards and Technology, has lied to us, and the war in Afghanistan is based on lies. But where do they really get into contact with the data? And then I tell them, dig for yourself. I mean, you can start with Wikipedia, but be aware that is already propaganda, and then be aware that World Trade Center 7 is probably the best way to start, because there you have a building coming down, was not hit by a plane. And then you have only two possible ways. It's either fire or controlled demolition. And then if you can, go with Leroy Halsey, who says, it's controlled demolition. And if you're there, watch the film of Ted Walter, Peace, War, and 9/11 with Graeme MacQueen. That's for me a very good path to maneuver through the data. Or what do you say to somebody who's now maybe 20 years old and asks you and says, how can I find the truth on 9/11? Where do you advise people to start?
Since Peace, War, 9/11 came out, that's where I start with people. We kind of made it. We made it with that intention, especially for young people. To be sort of a history lesson in a way. Like if it really fills in. It brings you back to the middle part of the film brings you back to what it was like on that day and in that period after, and the reactions that first responders and witnesses were having to what they were seeing. That's one of the key aspects of Graham's analysis to 9/11 is the eyewitness accounts. So it really brings people back. And yeah, I would start with that because of it gives you sort of the full picture in 90 minutes. It covers Building 7, covers the eyewitness evidence of the Twin Towers destruction, as well as some of the hard science as well, which Graham was kind of equally capable at doing. He wrote a couple papers that were using hard science, and then the anthrax attacks, which were a big part of the whole operation. That is, the media and the government, the FBI, have tried to get us to think that the anthrax attacks had nothing to do with 9/11 because they couldn't get their story of Al Qaeda in Iraq being responsible for it to work. So they separated it. But so we have to look at those two things together, which Graham does in the film. Building 7 as a single topic, Building 7 is of course perhaps the best starting point. And Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth has a 15-minute film just about Building 7. It's a great thing to share with people. But I think people also, I think Peace, War, 9/11 puts it more in historical context and gets to the why. In this day and age, I think the why is, I've sort of moved away a little bit from just focusing on the science, but you got to hit the why, and you got to hit, you know, yeah, the why is so important as we get 22, 23 years away from it. And young people, I think, need to, it helps young people understand that the world they're living in today is very much a creation of what happened 22 years ago. So
that's true. It was the start of the 21st century, and if we start with a lie, you know, we'll be confused ever afterwards. So if we get rid of the lie, I think there's a fair chance that we can find truth and peace. I'd like to conclude it like that, and maybe give you space for last thoughts. I mean, what is something that you would really advise somebody who's maybe watching this conversation that we have, and who's maybe in despair and things, you know, that things go down the wrong way, and we're just heading for more wars, and you know, there's a lot of YouTube communications like that, and it's just, you know, lifting fear in people, and I really don't want that people get, you know, into fear. Is there something else that you can say on the positive side, or something that where you can say where you find your own strength, just to conclude our conversation?
Yeah, well, it's, you know, I would say it's difficult, but I think I think that people, I'd say it's okay to people. I would just encourage people to be brave enough to, like, really go outside of your comfort zone and truly almost assume that you cannot understand, that your understanding of the world is not entirely correct. I kind of operate in that way now, especially like kind of the post-COVID era, and just information, so many different perspectives out there. Yes. I kind of like try to assume that I don't understand most things about the world, and don't hold fast too much to my own viewpoint. Yes, my values, that's one thing, but my interpretation of events and facts and stuff, I just try to almost assume that I don't have the whole picture, and therefore I don't feel that wedded to any particular point of view. And if you just kind of accept that, then maybe the fear goes away a little bit, and you can just go into this kind of chaotic process of learning, where your assumptions, you're allowing your assumptions to be constantly kind of reevaluated, and say, oh, maybe I did have that wrong, maybe I had that wrong. So I'd encourage people to be less rigid in their assumptions. And that goes for myself too. I try to remind myself that every day. And then to just be fearless, to not be afraid of being that guy or that girl who believes in the conspiracy theories, you know, to just be relentless, compassionate, sensitive, you know, and when you talk to people, trying to understand where they're at and listening, but to not be afraid of being that the outcast, is also really important. And then you know, it's not as if everything in the world is doom and gloom. It is over in Palestine right now. It is horrible what is happening there. But so the more that you expose yourself to the horrors of the world, you know, also remember that there are many beautiful things happening at the same time. You know, I think that's important to see the mix of things going on in the world.
Yes,
but to not just focus on beautiful things. We want to look at the horrors as well and try to solve them. You know. Yeah. And that it's a long process, and, you know, to at least have hope and faith that we will gradually get closer to a truly democratic, and just and peaceful world. I think as Graeme speaks in the film to this idea that we can get to a point where war no longer exists, or war at a mass scale no longer exists. I believe it's possible. You know, I think we might be talking about 100 years or 200 years, but you know, I believe in being a part of that journey and contributing to that journey towards a world that is truly democratic and peaceful. It's spiritual.
Yes. It's certainly worth an effort, isn't it?
So we're just about ourselves. That's kind of boring, just to worry about yourself and your own, you know, your own pleasure and entertainment. So if there's a higher purpose that I could be a part of, it's to try to bring us to a more peaceful and just world.
Yeah, same here. Same here. That makes it so much more meaningful. And yeah, I really thank you for the time that you took to talk to me today. I want to remind everybody of the movie and documentary Peace, War, and 9/11 with the late Graeme MacQueen. And I encourage everybody who's been listening to us in this conversation to take some of the wisdom that Ted shared with us. It was almost Socratic when you said, "I know that I don't know." That we become playful with different interpretations of the world, and that we don't sort of stick to our own interpretation and kill the others if they have another interpretation, but just stick with the values. I mean, love and peace and truth, or courage, these values are wonderful. I thought you put it very precisely there. So thanks a lot, Ted, and keep up your great work.
Yeah, can I say one more thing? You can also
Sure.
find film, not just the film Peace, War, 9/11, but if you go to ic911.org, you can, Graham's book on the anthrax attacks is there and available for free. And also you can find a link to another book that was published right before he died that is a collection of all of his papers related to 9/11 called The Pentagon's B Movie. So all of his work, the amazing body of work that he produced in his lifetime is very accessible, whether it's on our website or others. So yeah.
Very good. We put the link below this conversation. And it's when you said it's just exactly 1 year since Graeme passed away. It's meant to be that we talk today. So thanks a lot, Ted, for your time, and all the best, and a lot of courage and also joy for your peace research. It's much appreciated.
Same to you, Daniel. Same to you. Thank you very much.
Stay in touch. Ciao.
Bye.